A Sword Among the Stars by Jansen Davies. Chapter 1. The Fourth Musketeer. Sebastian Kern was 8 years old when he first read The Three Musketeers. He devoured it in a single weekend, curled up in a blanket fort with a flashlight and a bowl of cereal that went soggy long before he noticed. The story lit something in him, a spark that felt older than he was, like a memory from a past life. He read it again the next week, and again the week after that. But even then, something about it bothered him. "They're called the Three Musketeers," he told his mother one evening, "but there are 4 of them, and they don't even use muskets. They use swords." His mother smiled, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Maybe it's not about the weapons. Maybe it's about the bond." Sebastian frowned. That wasn't good enough. He wanted precision. He wanted truth. He wanted to understand why the world insisted on naming things wrong. So he asked for fencing lessons. At first, his parents thought it was a phase, like the time he wanted to be a paleontologist after watching Jurassic Park, or when he tried to learn Morse code because he read somewhere that spies used it. But fencing stuck, and within weeks it was clear that Sebastian wasn't just interested, he was gifted. His instructors called him a prodigy. His footwork was instinctive, his timing flawless. He didn't just react, he anticipated. He moved like he'd been born with a blade in his hand. By age 10, he was winning local tournaments. By 12, he was undefeated nationally. By 15, he was a global phenomenon. Foil, épée, saber, it didn't matter. He mastered them all. His matches became spectacles. Crowds came not to see if he would win, but how quickly. And yet, with each victory, something inside him dimmed. He stopped displaying his trophies. They gathered dust in a closet. Gold medals lay forgotten in drawers. Interviews bored him. Endorsements felt hollow. He was rich, famous, and utterly alone. There was no one left to challenge him. No duel that could stir his blood. No rival who could make him sweat. He was a sword without a war. Sometimes, late at night, he would sit by his pool and stare at the water, wondering what it was all for. He had climbed every mountain the fencing world had to offer, and now he stood at the summit, looking out over a landscape that no longer moved him. He thought of the musketeers, of their loyalty, their fire, their cause, and he wondered what it would feel like to fight for something that mattered. Chapter 2. The Light in the Water. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind that felt like it had been copy-pasted from 1,000 others. The sun hung lazily over the Kern estate, casting long shadows across the marble tiles of the indoor pool. Sebastian swam laps, his body moving with mechanical precision, each stroke a rhythm he no longer felt. The water was warm, the silence complete. No coaches, no cameras, no expectations. Just him and the ache of boredom. He surfaced, slick with chlorine, and leaned against the pool's edge. The ceiling above shimmered with refracted light, and for a moment he imagined it was a sky, one he might someday fly through if only he had wings. Then the light changed. It wasn't the sun, it wasn't the pool lights. It was something else, brighter, colder, impossibly pure. It filled the room like a flood, washing over the walls, the water, his skin. Sebastian blinked against the glare, shielding his eyes, and then he saw her. She stood at the edge of the pool, tall and still. Her skin was pale silver, almost translucent. Her eyes were large, dark, and unblinking. She wore armor that shimmered like liquid metal, and though her features were smooth and hairless, there was something unmistakably feminine about her. Sebastian stared, heart pounding. "Who? What are you?" Her voice was melodic, resonant, like a song sung underwater. "I am Quortex. I come from the Federation of 1,000 Worlds." He pulled himself from the pool, dripping and stunned. "You're an alien." "Yes." "And you're in my pool." "Yes." He wrapped a towel around his waist, trying to make sense of the moment. Why? Quortex stepped forward, her gaze unwavering. We have searched the galaxy for a champion, a swordsman without equal, one who might stand against the darkness that threatens us all. Sebastian laughed, a short, incredulous sound. You think I'm the greatest swordsman in the universe? Quortex didn't blink. You are. He looked down at his hands, calloused, scarred, familiar. I'm just a guy with a pool and too many medals. She tilted her head. And yet, no one has ever defeated you. He didn't answer. Because it was true. Quortex continued. There is a king, a tyrant. He wields a blade forged from the heart of a dying star. He challenges worlds to single combat. If he wins, he takes the planet. If he loses, he has never lost. Sebastian felt the air shift. The weight of her words settled on his shoulders like armor. He is coming for us, she said, and we have no one who can stand against him. Sebastian turned away, staring at the rippling water. He thought of the emptiness, the victories that meant nothing, the silence that followed every cheer. What happens if I say no? Quortex's voice softened. Then we fall, and the galaxy becomes his. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt something stir. Not adrenaline, not ego. Purpose. He turned back to her. Okay, I'll do it. Quortex raised a hand and the light returned, brighter, sharper, alive. Sebastian Kern, master of the blade, stepped forward and vanished. Chapter 3. The Champion's Arrival. Sebastian landed on stone, not the polished marble of his estate, but something ancient, rough, warm, and humming with energy. He blinked against the sudden brightness, the air thick with unfamiliar scents. Ozone, spice, something floral and metallic all at once. He stood on a balcony carved into the side of a mountain, overlooking a city that defied description. Towers spiraled like seashells, bridges floated without support. Creatures of every shape and hue moved through the streets below, some on foot, some hovering, some gliding like jellyfish through the air. And they were all looking up, at him. A cheer rose, wave-like, crashing against the cliffs and echoing through the valley. It wasn't just sound. It was emotion, raw and unfiltered. Hope, relief, awe. Sebastian stepped back, overwhelmed. What is this? Quortex stood beside him, her armor catching the light. This is Brillaria, capital of the Federation. They've waited centuries for a champion. He swallowed. I'm just a fencer. You're more than that now. The doors behind them opened and a procession emerged, royalty from a dozen worlds. Their appearances varied wildly. One had wings like stained glass, another shimmered like liquid mercury, another was a sentient cloud of light. But they all bowed. Sebastian, unsure, bowed back. A tall being with bark-like skin stepped forward. Sebastian Kern, wielder of the blade, we welcome you. You are the sword that may yet save the stars. He wanted to protest, to say he wasn't ready, but the words caught in his throat. These beings had placed their faith in him, and for the first time in years, he felt the weight of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a calling. That night, a banquet was held in his honor. The hall was vast, carved from crystal that pulsed with music. Tables overflowed with food, some recognizable, most not. There were fruits that sang when sliced, drinks that changed color with mood, and bread that shimmered like moonlight. Sebastian sat at the head of the table, flanked by dignitaries and warriors. Quortex remained close, her presence steady. He leaned toward her. Why me? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed a small device on the table. It projected a hologram, grainy footage of Sebastian's matches. his footwork, his precision, his calm. "You fight without anger," she said, "without cruelty. You fight with grace. That is rare in our galaxy." He watched the footage, detached. It felt like watching someone else. "You don't just win," she continued. "You elevate the duel. You make it art." Sebastian looked down at his hands. "I don't know if I can beat him." Quortex's eyes met his. "You don't have to know. You just have to try." Later, in his quarters, a room larger than his entire house back on Earth, he stood by the window, staring at the stars. They felt closer here, brighter, hungrier. He thought of the alien king, of the blade forged from a dying star, of the planets already lost, and he wondered what kind of man he would need to become to face him. Chapter 4. The Sword Beneath the River. The morning came with urgency. Sebastian awoke to a soft chime and the voice of Quortex, calm but clipped. "The enemy fleet has entered orbit. The king's transport is descending." He dressed quickly, pulling on the clothes laid out for him, simple, dark, flexible. Not armor, not ceremonial, just a leather jacket and boots. It felt right. Outside, the city buzzed with tension. The sky had changed, no longer the serene canvas of stars, but a battlefield waiting to happen. Ships hovered like insects, sleek and silent. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Quortex led him through winding corridors to a chamber unlike any he'd seen. It was circular, domed, and filled with water that glowed faintly blue. In the center, on a pedestal of stone, lay a sword. Sebastian stepped forward, drawn by something he couldn't name. The blade was long, elegant, and unmistakably earth-forged. Its hilt bore ancient markings, Celtic knots, runes, and a single word etched in silver. "Excalibur." He stared. This is a myth." Quortex nodded. "To your people, yes. But myths often hide truths. Our survey ships found it buried beneath the waters of a forgotten river. It called to us." Sebastian reached out, hesitant. His fingers brushed the hilt, and everything changed. A surge of energy shot through him, not painful but profound. It wasn't just power, it was memory. Echoes of battles long past, of kings and knights, of sacrifice and honor. The sword was alive. He gripped it fully, and the glow intensified. The water around the pedestal rippled outward, as if bowing to the blade. Sebastian staggered back, breathless. It's real." Quortex watched him carefully. "It has chosen you." He looked down at the weapon in his hand. It felt like an extension of himself. Not a tool, not a trophy, a partner. Outside, the stadium loomed. It was the largest structure he had ever seen, miles wide, carved into the planet itself. 10 million spectators filled the stands, their voices a thunderous tide. Vendors moved through the crowd, selling holograms of Sebastian's face, bottles labeled "authentic human scent," and miniature replicas of Excalibur. He stepped into the arena, the sand warm beneath his boots. The alien king waited at the far end, massive and armored, his blade the size of a car's fender. He laughed when he saw Sebastian. "This is your champion," he roared. "A child with a toy?" Sebastian said nothing. He walked forward, Excalibur humming in his hand. The referee, a floating orb with a voice like gravel, hovered between them. "Combatants ready?" Sebastian nodded. The king raised his blade. "To the death," the referee intoned. Sebastian took a breath, and the world held still. Chapter 5. To the Death. The silence before the duel was unlike any Sebastian had ever known. Not the hush of anticipation before a fencing match, not the quiet of a crowd holding its breath. This was deeper, cosmic. as if the galaxy itself had paused to witness what came next. The alien king towered over him, a living fortress of obsidian armor. His blade was jagged, pulsing with red light, forged from the heart of a dying star. It radiated heat and menace, a weapon designed not just to kill, but to conquer. Sebastian stood in contrast. No armor, no shield, just a leather jacket, worn boots, and Excalibur glowing faintly in his right hand. The sword felt calm, steady, alive. The referee's voice rang out, amplified across the stadium. "Combatants ready!" The king raised his blade, laughing. "I will carve your bones into my throne." Sebastian didn't flinch. He simply nodded. "To the death," the referee declared. The king struck first, a horizontal sweep, wide and brutal, meant to cleave Sebastian in two. The blade screamed through the air, kicking up sand and heat. But Sebastian was already moving, ducking low, pivoting on his heel, Excalibur rising in a blur of silver flame. The moment slowed. Sebastian felt the sword guide him, not with force but with intention. It was not a weapon, it was a will, a whisper, a memory of every duel ever fought. He struck. A single clean arc. The alien king's helmet split with a hiss, his head separated from his body, tumbling across the sand like a discarded crown. His massive form stood for a moment longer, as if unwilling to believe it had fallen. Then it collapsed. Silence. 10 million spectators stared, stunned. No one moved. No one spoke. Then a single cheer. Then another, and another. The stadium erupted. Sebastian stood in the center, Excalibur humming softly, the sand warm beneath his feet. He didn't raise the sword. He didn't bow. He simply breathed. Quortex appeared beside him, her expression unreadable. "It is done." He looked at her. "That was too easy." She nodded. "You were never meant to struggle. You were meant to end it." Somewhere in the crowd, a child held up a replica of Excalibur, eyes wide with wonder. Somewhere else, a vendor wept, clutching a bottle labeled "human scent." Sebastian turned away from the body of the king. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel pride. He felt peace. Chapter 6. The Gift. The aftermath of the duel was a storm of celebration. The alien king's body was removed with reverence, not spite. His reign had been cruel, but his power undeniable. Even tyrants, it seemed, were mourned in the language of legacy. Sebastian was escorted from the arena by a procession of dignitaries. Music filled the air, strange, beautiful harmonies that shimmered like light. Flowers bloomed in his path, summoned by alien botanists. Children reached out to touch his hand. Elders bowed low, whispering blessings in languages he didn't understand. He was no longer a swordsman. He was a symbol. In the great hall of the Federation, the leaders of 1,000 worlds gathered. Their forms were varied, some crystalline, some gaseous, some little more than flickering shadows, but their voices were unified. "You have saved us," said the High Chancellor, "a being composed entirely of light. You may claim any reward, a planet, a fleet, a title. Say the word, and it is yours." Sebastian stood at the center of the chamber, Excalibur sheathed at his side. He looked around at the grandeur, the opulence, the power, and he felt none of it. "I don't want a planet," he said quietly. The chamber fell silent. "I don't want riches, or fleets, or statues." The leaders exchanged glances, confused. "I want to go home." Quortex stepped forward, her voice soft. "You would refuse all this?" Sebastian nodded. "I didn't fight for glory. I fought because you needed someone, and because I needed something to matter again." The High Chancellor tilted its radiant head. Then what shall we give you? Sebastian looked down at the sword. Let me keep this. Quortex smiled. It is already yours. It chose you to be its champion. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Sebastian stood by the window, watching the stars. They no longer felt distant. They felt familiar, like old friends. Quortex joined him, her armor dimmed to a soft silver. You could stay, she said. Become our protector, our legend. He shook his head. I'm not a legend. I'm just a man who got tired of winning matches that didn't mean anything. She studied him. And now? He looked at Excalibur, resting beside him. Now I know what it means to fight for something real. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Then it is time. The portal opened, soft, shimmering, like a dream. Sebastian stepped through. Chapter 7. The Sword's Whisper. Home was unchanged. The pool still shimmered under the skylight. The marble tiles gleamed. The silence returned, familiar and deep. But Sebastian was not the same. He stood in his bedroom, the sword resting beside his bed, not mounted, not displayed, but placed with care. Excalibur didn't belong in a case. It wasn't a trophy. It was a companion, a witness. At night, he dreamed differently, not of matches or medals, but of stars, of alien cities and cheering crowds, of a blade that burned with purpose. Sometimes he saw Quortex, her eyes calm and knowing. Sometimes he saw the alien king, his final moment frozen in sand and silence. And sometimes he heard the sword, not in words but in feeling, a whisper of readiness, a hum of possibility. Sebastian began to train again, not for competition but for clarity. His movements were slower now, more deliberate. He no longer chased perfection. He listened. He let the blade guide him. He taught no students, gave no interviews. But sometimes he would walk the edge of his property at night, Excalibur in hand, and feel the stars watching. He knew the galaxy was vast, that peace was fragile, that tyrants would rise again. And when they did, someone would call, not for a warrior, but for a sword. And Sebastian Kern would answer, a sword among the stars. The end. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, please hit the bell icon for notifications.